Okay, and hopefully now we are live. So I'm Daniel Miller here at Spiral Gardens. I'm being graciously filmed by Khadija, holding the camera, one of our staff here. We are starting our series. Well, we've been doing classes throughout the history of Spiral Gardens, and we have done some online classes this year, but we're starting what's going to be at least a weekly thing. This is going to be my of offering a class, online class once a week, and just have it be a regular thing. It'll be about an hour, kind of low key, and we're starting 10 minutes early today so that folks have a chance to show up. We know that people don't show up to these things right away. So if you're tuning into this later in the archive, feel free to skip 8 minutes forward when we'll have the official beginning of this. In the meantime, I'm going to get a few things set up. I'm going to try to find this on my iPad so that I can see the live chat. So far, I can't see it here. And we're going to get that set up so that I can interact with you all. Now, I'm usually much more comfortable. Aha, I found it. Here we go. Fall and winter food gardening in the Bay Area. That is the topic. Okay, we got to turn the volume down here. But yeah, this is my introduction to doing classes online like this. Hopefully, see, I want to get it so I can see the chat. There it is. Okay, yeah, so I can see the comments down below. That's excellent. So yeah, this will be an interactive thing as we go along. I started to say, usually we've done in-person classes here, and those have always been a big part of our tradition. For obvious reasons right now, because of the thing, we cannot do that like we used to. And the education piece it's been tricky trying to figure out how to do that this year. So of course we have to adapt and do it online. So we'll be figuring out the technology and the platforms and stuff as we go along. Right now, obviously, we're starting broadcasting live on Facebook because that's where the majority of our followers are at the moment. Eventually, we may adjust platforms. We're talking about different things like Crowdcast or YouTube and so on. Right now, I started us a YouTube channel yesterday, so we need at least 1,000 people before we can live stream, at least mobile live stream outdoors from YouTube. So, we'll put the link for that down in the description later so that you can go over there and just subscribe to it. That doesn't cost any money on YouTube. And then once we get 1,000 of you over there, we'll be able to live stream from there. In the meantime, we'll be putting these archives over there. But yeah, we're just going to chat for 5 more minutes, and then we'll start this for real. Folks are showing up. Oh, the other thing I want to do with this is I'm not very good at navigating iPads. I want to share this if I can figure out how to do that. No, I don't want more like this. I want this one. Here, let me just figure this out for a second. How to share it. Okay, I can do that. And then I've got options. Share tab. Is that what I want to do? I'm really good at desktop, but I'm terrible at iPads. I can edit, change the quality. Now, it's one thing you might want to look at, Khadija. It says the source is 480p. If there's a quality options for you, it'd be great if we can get it up to 1080 if possible. I know that phone can go up to 4K. But yeah, we're just getting things set up, guys. We're going to start for real in a second. All right. That's not what I wanted. I was going to share this to my page, but clearly I don't know how to do that. Anyway, you guys are welcome to share this and put it out to the world. You'd think it would be an easy thing for me to figure that out, but I'm not computer illiterate, but this whole Facebook live streaming thing is new to me. It is. All right, well, I'm going to forget about it. Anyway, let's get back to it. Get back up where I can see the chat. Hello, Patricia. How are you? How have you been in these uncertain times? I still need to come pick up your plum tree and need more veggies. Um, I've been well. I mean, there's the general anxiety about all the things going on. There's a lot of unrest right now. Hopefully, that's leading to good change in a lot of different ways. But as far as Spiral Gardens goes, we've been busier than ever. And that's been kind of a silver lining. With everybody at home right now, a lot of people have time to be in their backyards. And that has been really amazing for people making more vegetable gardens. I would estimate, and probably not exaggerating, that there's probably 4 to 5 times more people who are growing vegetable gardens in their backyards right now. And they've been coming here to get their starts and to get information. It's been hard to give the information to really help people succeed with this, because we really want it not just to be like a quick trend while the quarantine is going on, but we would really like this to continue. We've been on the soapbox for a long time, and it takes a little uncertain time sometimes for people to get to the survival thing of growing food in your backyard. But there's a lot of good reasons for it right now, besides the fact that people are home and they have time to do it. But we've seen supply lines become really uncertain in the grocery store, which is kind of a new thing to see shelves empty sometimes, at least here in the United States. And that's kind of a wake-up call to some people that things aren't as certain as we would think, that supply lines can be fragile when you have things like pandemics. Also, speaking of pandemics, keeping your immune system up right now is super important as well. Just so that if you do catch the virus or anything, that you have the immune support you need to be able to deal with it, your body to deal with it as efficiently as possible. So I think we are about to hit the hour. So I'd say let's do the official start of this now that hopefully some of you shown up. We're going to start out in the front and just from the front gate, and we're going to take a walk in here, and we're just going to go through the tables today and talk about what's appropriate for fall and winter gardening. All our things on the tables are for the time in the season. Come on, let's start right out here. All right, everybody. So now that we've had our preamble, this is the official start of the first of my series here at Spiral Gardens, teaching gardening. And this is going to be a regular thing every Thursday at 3 o'clock. We'll also have other teachers and other presenters. Hopefully you go back and watch the archive of Kanchan teaching how to make herbal salves last week. But this is something that we're going to be doing for the future, is doing more online education, because a lot more people are making gardens right now. They're home and they're able to do that. We were just talking about some of the good reasons for that. So we want to get the education out there that helps people succeed and really keep doing this for the long term. So yeah, we're here at the Spiral Gardens Community Food Security Project at 2850 Sacramento Street. So if you want to come down, come visit us. Right now, we're open to the public on weekends, Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 5 if you want to come buy plants. If you want to volunteer, that's available Tuesday through Friday from noon to 5. Just email us at info at spiralgardens.org if you want to come and volunteer, and we'll get you set up to come on and help us. So let's go on inside. We do have sugarcane, Patricia. We can talk about that when we get there. So we're going to start around over here, and I don't leave Khadijah behind. We'll be getting better and more professional at this as we go along. But you got to start somewhere. I've been kind of resistant to starting to do this online, but we're just going to go for it. And then as we go along, we'll really get the ropes. But this is our first practice today. So I could go into the history of spiral gardens. I can talk about why food gardens is important, but we're only going to go for an hour today. So go ahead. You can check out our website, spiralgardens.org. Basically, we're just an organization dedicated to helping people grow food in the city. And we've been doing this since 1993. So this is my 27th year of working on this project. And since 2004, we've been on this site, but we've worked on a lot of different sites around town. So we're in the Bay Area, and a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today is really specific to the San Francisco Bay Area and California. We're specifically in Berkeley. There's a lot of microclimates here, but it's a really kind of not totally unique, but there's only 5 places like this in the world. They call it a Mediterranean climate. Because Mediterranean is one of the areas that do have this climate, but it's also South Australia, South Africa, and Chile that have the same climate. Of course, it's named out of the one European place out of all those, but we could just as well call it the South African climate or whatever. But it's characterized by mild summers and mild winters. So it doesn't get that hot in the summer, at least anywhere near the water, which has the maritime influence like we do. Like I can feel a bay breeze coming on, even though it is uncharacteristically hot today. At the end of the fall, we tend to get hot weather, but it has been hotter in general. We can talk a lot about that as we go along. But it doesn't get that hot in the summer, and it doesn't get that that cold in the winter. It barely ever freezes. So it's a really mild, very forgiving climate, and it means that we can grow stuff year round. We're not going to get any snow that's going to stop us. We don't have to wrap things up at any point. Sometimes for a gardener, that's kind of annoying because you don't always get a break that you'd like. But at the same time, if you're trying to grow your own food, this is a really good place to do it because you can do it year round. And so what I thought would be just an easy way to start today is on these tables and going forward, we've curated a selection of plants that you can grow right now. So I thought we'd go through them and we would kind of use them as a prompt to talk about each thing. And this could be a Q&A if you have questions. The reason I'm holding this thing right here is just I'm keeping an eye on the chat. And so if you have questions as we go along, it'd be great if we can keep them on topic today and about the stuff I'm talking about, because there's so many things we can talk about in gardening, and that's one of the reasons why this is going to be a weekly series that we'll be able to move through that information. So hopefully that'll catch on, and we'll, over time move through all the different things we can talk about. But yeah, feel free to put in questions about what's happening right now. So the general rule that you can think about for growing in the fall and winter in the Bay Area is leafy things. Leafy things and things in the onion family and peas and things that are perennial anyway. And we're going to need to introduce a little bit of vocabulary as we go into this. And the first bit of that is there's words for whether plants live within 1 year or one season, whether they live for 2 years, and whether they live on and on and on. So if they live just within one season or 1 year, they're called an annual. And it's from Latin, and anno is year. So annual means plants that live within a year. Ones that live 2 years, and by a year we mean the calendar year, of going from solstice to solstice. And so ones that live 2 calendar years or some fraction thereof are called biennials. So the same, you got the ennial is the anno from the Latin, and the bi is 2, so they live 2 years. And then perennial is, peri means many, so perennials are plants that live many years, from 3 onward to centuries, or some plants can live thousands of years. Cool. All right, Pat, I will see you when you come in. Um, so you can always plant perennials, which is why we've put that vocabulary in now, because those will live, onwards. Some of them might have some timing, but generally the Bay Area is forgiving enough that you can plant perennials anytime. And we'll get towards the perennials towards the end of this little walk we're going to take through the tables. Um, but so I started by saying that a general rule for what you can plant in the winter here, just an easy way to think about it, is that things that you eat for the leaves, leafy greens, whether it's salad or collards or mustards and kale and so on, those ones generally are all good in the winter here. In fact, a lot of them are a lot happier in the winter. Some of them can be stressed out in the summer sun when it's too hot. Things that vegetables that are fruits that we call vegetables, and that's anything that has a seed generally. So that's like peppers, melons, tomatoes, squashes. So vegetables that are fruits generally are a hot season thing, and they don't do well over the winter here. So a lot of your success in growing things year round here doesn't mean you can like plant anything at any time, but it does mean there's always something you can plant. And so having an idea of what you can plant will definitely help you succeed. And there are some exceptions to those general rules I talked about, but hopefully as we go on through this, you guys will kind of get an idea of what's in season right now. So we're starting in these first 2 tables, this one and that one over there. Those we call our salad tables. And a lot of it's lettuce, but it's stuff that you can eat raw, put in a salad. It's kind of an adventurous salad for all the stuff that we have together here. But yeah, when we can start all the way down here, and I'm going to name these plants as we go through them, and we can look at the signs, but I'll stop along the way and talk about various things. So here we have a edible chrysanthemum. There's a lot of greens that are sort of generically called Asian greens, but this one is called Tokyo Bacana. This first time I'm growing it, and I'm actually really excited about it. It's supposed to have very frilled edges on I think, white stems. It's going to look pretty cool. A lot of the stuff we're growing is really young right now. One, because we want it to be young when you get it, so that it's not stressed out and overgrown in its pot. But also, we grow things here, and that's one of the things that makes us different than other nurseries. You can see, like in this, for example, there's a spectrum here of ones that are big and come up, and then ones that are just sprouting, and then ones that we've seeded and that haven't come up yet. So we kind of have this sort of assembly line of plants happening. So we're seeding them ourselves back here, and we move them forward as they get ready, and then they go out into the world, either planted on our farm across the street. We have a free community farm over there that we could talk about, or people come and buy them at low cost to take home to plant in their own gardens. And then that's also the bake sale that supports our nonprofit, so that we don't have to be grant driven. So just explaining that, so as we go through here, you'll understand why there's bare dirt at the end, and then actually like larger sprouts as we move forward. So yeah, going through here, we've really tried to diversify the number of leafy greens here, because if you can only mainly eat leafy greens during the winter, you need a lot of leafy greens, kids. You got to make them exciting, have different colors and textures and flavors, just to really mix it up, because you are a bit more limited unless you've done a ton of canning and setting by. I mean, I know here we can always just go to the grocery store and get stuff that would grow at any time of year, but pretending that we're going to eat in season and more limited, you would have had to have preserved a lot of that stuff to have them now. So yeah, we talked about the Tokyo Bacana a little bit. We've got some Radicchio. This is one I'm actually pretty excited about right now. I haven't grown this before, but I've eaten it in Chinatown a lot. This is a type of gailan, which is kind of a small broccoli. It's mostly like a broccoli spear or a broccoli stem, and it grows really fast. A lot of these so-called Asian greens, like the Tokyo Bikana and the gailan, and then coming up over here we'll have a tatsoi and a pak choi. They're what I call really good fast food because they can grow, depending on the temperature, they can grow within a month. And you can put them in 1 month, 2 months, cut them, eat them, and they're ready for you really quickly. And that's one of the things that's good about them. It's one of the things that sometimes makes people feel that they're difficult to grow, is because they go to seed, go to flower, go to seed, which is also called bolting, and that happens. That can happen really soon, right? So if you're trying to just put them in and have them, that can be difficult. But if you want food quickly, and you know that's going to happen, and you keep planting them in succession, they're actually really useful that way to feed yourself. Of course, it takes continued planting to do that, but not that bad. Like once a month, or twice, or every 2 months, or sometimes quicker, depending on what you're planting. But that's just a good thing to know about them. Now, as it gets colder into the winter, they will last longer, because a lot of that going to flower and going to seed is facilitated by heat. And so the less heat there is, the less quickly they do that. Now, we're, about a month into fall technically right now. I worry less about the calendar divisions of the seasons and more of the Bay Area feel of the season. So for the Bay Area, we're still kind of in late summer right now. It still tends to be hot this time of year. Now, if we go on our normal seasons, back before global warming really started to feel evident, it generally got cold at the end of October, and it would get cold enough by late December, January that you could still have stuff in the ground, but they wouldn't grow much. That's getting extended now by the heating we've had. You never know exactly what weather patterns are going to be happening with the changes that are happening right now. But mostly here in the Bay Area, we've gotten elevated temperatures. We have had warmer summers, and then we have a warmer fall and a warmer winter, which is bad in a lot of ways because, California was on fire all year. But as far as growing your own food, it actually has allowed us to grow more things. We've been able to grow hotter varieties that need more heat in the winter, and it really extends the summer growing season, or excuse me, the winter growing season, where there's never a time now when things don't have enough heat that they're not growing. At least in the past years, that's been my experience. Sophia, I have a tray of cabbage and bok choy that I sowed a month ago. I'm afraid they're a little root bound. Is it better to buy new starters and plant them when it's a little cooler? I would go, if you have them and you've already sowed them, I'd go ahead and put them in and see what they do. The great thing about a lot of those types of things like bok choy, even cabbage, is you can really eat them at any size. So even if you don't succeed and get the prize-winning size plants, you might as well put them in because you have them, and then plant something else too, so that is a little less root bound, and so you have that growing as well. But even if they don't get to a full size, you can eat them at any size, and there's no problem with that at all. So yeah, just going through here, we have a really pretty lettuce, Mayan Jaguar. Now lettuces, you can definitely grow through the fall and winter. They don't mind the temperature so much unless it gets really cold. If we do get towards freezing, they will get damaged by that. Not always. Some of them are tougher than others. But the thing that can mess up your lettuces in the winter is if we get some really hard rains, they can get pounded. And that sometimes is not good for them. They can get physically damaged by hard rains. But generally, they like the cold. You can put them in, they'll last longer. And they're a great one to keep doing. And they're also so easy. They're kind of as like the Asian greens. You can grow them quickly. So even if they get messed up, you can just, eat what's left and plant some more. Now, speaking of hardy lettuces, this is a little bit of the romaine. Uh, the main variety of romaine that we know that we use is a Paris Island Cos. Cos, C-O-S, is another name for the romaine varieties. Um, it's really good in the summer and in the winter. In the summer, it resists bolting very well, and in the winter, it's got a little bit more uh, sturdiness that can make it resist a hard pounding rain or something like that. Here we're finishing up our summer mix. This was a bunch of lettuces that were chosen for being resistant to bolting and got behind the pole there. Resistant to bolting and going to flower and seed in the summer, staying less bitter longer. So, there are some differences in that for lettuce, but they're not huge. The differences really are subtle. Some people come in and ask me what's the best lettuce for the summer, what's the best lettuce for the winter, and there are some nuances like that. But really, a lettuce is a lettuce, and you can get away with it anytime. But some are sturdier than others. Definitely, there's different forms and flavors, and there is some difference of how soon they're bolt, and people have bred for that to really accentuate those differences as much as they can. But honestly, I don't find that much difference of what's good for winter and what's good for summer. But I'm not saying there's no difference. There's another lettuce mix here. Here's something that you can grow with impunity through summer and winter. It's called Italian dandelion, but really it's a kind of chicory. It's kind of bitter, but bitter foods are good for you. And food you grow in your garden is always going to be a little bit more bitter than what you're used to in the grocery store. But that's good. It's good for you. It's good for your liver, good for your gallbladder. A lot of ways that's good for health. In other cultures, there's a lot of bitters that are much more part of the cuisine than we have here in America. But yeah, Italian dandelion chicory will grow flawlessly through the winter, and in next year it's going to get beautiful blue flowers. You can also use the root of this. This is one that's been bred specifically eating the leaves as salad, but you can the root is also used medicinally. It's also brewed sort of as like a coffee substitute, the roasted root. There's lots of uses for roasted chicory. But so far, everything we've talked about is good for growing and planting right now. We did talk about like the summer mix and the more bolt resistant things. Right now, at this time of year, we're still sort of hedging our bets, because we don't know how long it's going to stay hot and then when it's going to get cold. It used to be easier to predict, more regular. So you can do a little bit of both. You can plant some bolt resistant lettuces, and then you can plant some stuff that is definitely going to be more for the cold. And then whatever doesn't work, eat it and then keep moving. We got some dill here. Dill is kind of thought of as more of a summer thing, but it does bolt really easily. It will grow through the winter, and it's actually going to be a lot less resistant to bolting when we get cooler. In the Bay Area, I mean, we're talking about the seasons and when to plant things, and you can bend a lot of rules here too, because our winters are so mild that a lot of times, plants don't fit hard and fast rules about when they'll grow and when they don't. Sometimes you can kind of cheat and grow summer annuals right through the winter here, if it's a mild one. And you can do the reverse too. You can grow things that prefer cool oftentimes through the middle of the year here. So it's good to know what to plant when and when you're bending the rules, but it's not always hard and fast. So as other gardeners watching this might be like, I thought that was a summer thing. And yeah, it might be, but there's a lot of summer things that don't mind our cool winters here either. There's less pest pressure during the winters, there's more water available, less heat stress, and so yeah, a lot of things will work. Here's a little niche salad green called mache, or corn salad. Oh, and actually this is the wrong sign. That's not, here, the mache is over here. It's these little guys, they don't get very big, but they're not super productive, but they're nice in the salad. And then right next to it here is dandelion, cousin to the chicory. This is just a straight, it's not wild anymore because we planted it, but it is a straight kind of wild dandelion. You can eat the greens, super healthy, eat the roots. It's good for your blood pressure. You don't have to pull it. It's a good thing. You're going to pick up some romaine lettuce. Excellent. So over here we have bulb fennel. So this is not the fennel that grows wild out there. This is the one that makes the big fat bulb underneath, and you can slice it up. It's got kind of a licoricey fennel flavor. Well, obviously a fennel flavor because this is fennel. You could also grow this in the summer. It's another one we're kind of bending the rules on, but it's going to like the winter here. It's going to go through just fine, and we'll have something to kind of mix it up with the rest of these greens, get some flavor in there. Up here, really popular here is cilantro. Cilantro, the seed of which is also coriander. Some of the dill that was planted next to it also kind of jumped the fence over here, and we've got some dill mixed in with the cilantro. Cilantro you can grow year round here. It is a very, it likes coolness. It'll last longer. It can go to seed really quickly if it's in heat or any kind of stress. So it will last longer and be more leafy if we take it through the winter into the cooler seasons. So yeah, you can grow it then and it's just more forgiving. I'll meet you right down there. I'm just going to grab a drink of water here real quick. My mouth is getting a little dry from all this talking. All right, so we're on to the next row of our salad stuff. So we have a lot of other kinds of lettuces here. It's great how you can really mix up textures and colors. You know, for me, I don't know, I have kind of a coarse palate. They all sort of taste like lettuce to me, but I like lettuce, so that's good. But we have some other things mixed in here too, just to make it more interesting. Over here is watercress. You can grow watercress at any time of year. You don't have to have running water to grow it, but it does need to stay moist. So watering it every day counts for that, or you can put it in a pot with a saucer that is holding some water for it. Or if you have sort of a wet spot or a leaky faucet, it will be a good place to put that. I really love watercress. It's got that bite to it. It's kind of a spice, but not really like capsaicin. It's just got this bite to it, and I've had like Vietnamese salads with like watercress and sprouts and squid and vinegar and stuff, and I think it's great. I love it. So we've got, this is a mini bib lettuce. So it is like a little gem is the variety people know of those, and those are ones that head smaller. So you can grow more full-size heads in a smaller space and, you know, get to maturity more quickly. And a lot of times a full head of lettuce is too big for one person. So, Mario, what about artichokes? Is it better to wait or seed them in winter? You can plant artichokes anytime. We have some artichokes, and once we get through the brassicas and the onions and the beneficial flowers, we're going to get to the perennials. So we're meaning to do this just for an hour. We might go a little overtime today, but we're going to keep moving, and we'll get to the artichokes down there, I promise. Over here, there's another cool versatile green is Mitsuna. Mitsuna is technically a mustard, and it's got a really nice spiky texture. It's very reliable. It lasts a long time. This is a really good one for what people call cut and come again. You can give it haircuts and take some of the leaves and then keep going. It doesn't really ever have like a final sized head, so it's a good one to continually harvest off of. People ask me a lot about cut and come again, what the lettuce is like. Can you just eat leaves off of them? And you can, but as I go along, I like doing that less. Like if I do a bed of baby greens, something like this is a mesclun mix where we've got some mustards, some mitsunas, and some lettuces mixed in, and they're planted closer together than you would if you're trying to get full heads of things, those are a really good opportunity for giving them haircuts, cutting off leaves, making yourself salads from that. And you can do that multiple times from the same patch. But if I'm growing lettuce for a head, or heading lettuces, I actually generally like to just wait for that full head, because I find that if I take leaves off them as I go along, it kind of stresses the plant out. It might make it go bitter more sooner. It might make it go to flower and bolt more quickly, because it's like, someone's taking my leaves off. I better go ahead and just make my seeds so I can continue my species. Now, if you plant them too close together, what I like to do is, instead of taking individual leaves off of them, I like to plant them too densely, like more densely than one head could form, and and when they start to crowd each other, I'll take some of them out young and make more space. So some I'll harvest small, some I'll harvest medium, until I get to the point where I get to full heads, and then harvest those, and then get some other stuff in there real quick. So we've got a couple questions here. Omri asks, do you have any tips on how close together to plant these fall-winter plants to prevent soil erosions from the rains? Well, if you're doing that kind of overplanting I was talking about, that's one good way to do it, where it's going to take the plant a while to get to its full size, no matter what you're planting. So you could knowingly plant them more dense than they need for full size. And then, especially things like these salad greens and leafy greens and stuff, you can eat them at any size. So you take some of them small, just as they're starting to crowd each other out. Then you take out the medium ones, and then they're till you get them spaced correctly for the large-sized ones. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is, if you do have spaces, it depends on how heavy the rains are that we get. Used to be end of October, you could expect some really heavy rains. It's really hard to predict now. Sometimes we'll get all the way into January, February before we've had really hard rains. A lot of times lately, it's been waiting till what would be the end of the rainy season, March and April and May, to actually rain heavily here. So some ways you may not need to worry about it, but then you do need to worry about it. Another thing you can do is mulch on the soil. If you're worried about the soil getting pounded, you can put various mulches on. I like straw as a mulch, for example. The downside of mulch is, especially during the wet season, it can facilitate slugs and snails. So it protects your soil and it's good for your soil, but it may also harbor things that want to eat your leafy greens. So mulch can be difficult. There's things you can do about snails and slugs. We'll talk about pest control. I don't know if we'll get to that today or not. Maybe that could be next week's topic, is pest control and disease, so that we don't get into too many things here, because we still have a lot of plants to go through. And I know we wouldn't get through everything today. Danielle asks, so do you just plant more once you pull them up? Yeah. So, well, ideally, you can be planting things in succession, right? Where, you're harvesting over here and you're planting over here, or you're seeding over here. So you have things coming at different stages all the way along, so that you're never just harvesting everything at once. It's better. A lot of people tend to be like, okay, this is our gardening day, and you get everything planted, and then you kind of just go through all those things until harvest. And that's great. If you do that, you've got a vegetable garden. But I think even better is, like, if planting day is every 2 weeks, or at least once a month, where you're filling in holes, you're planting things, you have, as you go along, you know how long things take, and you get a feel for the plants, you can actually make a plan. If you're not at that point yet, you can just keep filling empty space and making sure that always something new is coming. And you can even do that within a single type of crop. Like cilantro tends to go to seed so quickly. If you just have your one little patch of cilantro, when it goes to seed, you may not have cilantro for a while. So the area you'd like to have cilantro, maybe divide that into 3, and then plant things at different stages, either 2 weeks or a month apart, in each of your little 3 cilantro sections, so that you always have it at different ages, at different stages. And that's, if you're really trying to always have your own, that's one way that you can really guarantee that. So let's move along. I know the first part would take a while because we were, introducing some concepts. Here on the end of this table, we have a few other things. We've got a pak choi. Pak choi, there's a lot of different choys, pak choys and bok choys and so on, but they're all share sort of a similar structure. Uh, they're either bigger or smaller, or they have green stems or white stems or purple stems, and they're smooth or they're ruffled or a little bit hairy or so on. But they're just a great Asian green. Also in the mustard family. The mustard family and the cabbage family are the same thing, and they grow quick. They're good fast food. You can grow with some heat. You can grow a pak choi in 30 days. Over the winter, they'll last longer than that. I love them. My son loves noodle soups, and so when the broth is done boiling, I'll chop that up and just throw it in when I turn the heat off and just let them melt a little bit in the just boiled water. And with the noodles, they're great. Over here we have mustard. This is a red giant mustard, and then it's next to southern giant mustard. So this is like a southern states tradition. Um, this is more of an Asian tradition, but they're kissing cousins. They'll cross if you plant them in the same spot, and they both have that kind of spicy flavor. Subtle differences. This is more curly, more textured, whereas this has the color. And it does have its own texture to its leaves as well. They're great for the winter because in the summer, again, they're fast food, what we're calling fast foods. We talked about the names for how quickly things grow, the annuals, the biennials, the perennials. I think we need a new word which is like monthules. I don't know Latin for month, but in the summer in the full heat, these good these could be as quick as a month, maybe two, before they go to flower and go to seed. So we have them in this area here, which is kind of shaded. We have shade cloth over these things and up there to help them last a little bit longer here in the nursery. Danielle says her pak choi from the summer is still producing, just less than it was before. Do I let it keep going, or is there a good time to pull them up? Well, you can eat them whenever you want. Just eat them in stages and just use that space and open up and put something else in. Don't be afraid to eat your plants. That's what they're there for. And yeah, you could do either. If you let it go too long, you might get to the point where they go a little bit bitter and they're not as good. But really, especially through the winter, things don't get as bitter as easily. So you could really eat them anytime you feel like. I would say pull them up when you actually have time to cook them, and then do it. So over here now, we're getting into the broccolis and the cabbage and the cauliflower. These are also mustard family greens, but a lot of times now these are actually eaten for their flowers. So I said the things that you can grow in the winter are mainly things that you eat for the leaves, but there's some exceptions to that. I mean, one of them is stems. We talked about some things where you're actually eating the stem of them, and the other is flowers, or the flower buds. The flower buds are the part that we generally call the broccoli or the cauliflower. And in the summer, you can grow all of these year-round in the Bay Area. In the summer, it can be a little trickier because they can get heat stressed, especially if you skip some waterings or something like that. They can get heat stressed, and then they may go the flower smaller than you'd like, and that just means a smaller head of broccoli or a smaller head of cauliflower. In the winter, it's a little bit more forgiving because they're less likely to get stressed out, and they're also less likely to get bug stress or disease stress during the winter. So you're more likely to get a bigger head of broccoli. The plant will get bigger before it tries to make its flower. It might do it, depending on when you plant it and how the heat goes, it might try to make its flower before the end of the year, or more likely, if we cool down, it will make it in the spring, which is even better because the plant will have grown bigger and larger by then, and you'll get a great big head of broccoli. You can do it during the hot season here, but it takes more fertility than most people know or think about. So you really got to feed your soil a lot of compost, a lot of fertilizer, good watering, so that they grow fast and they don't get stressed. But in the winter, fall and winter, as it gets cooler, it's a little easier on these guys. So you're more likely to succeed with them, even though you can grow them year round. So just one, we're not going to go fully into pests and diseases today, but just as a general rule, bugs and disease like heat. Um, there's exceptions to that, but bugs tend to breed more during the hot season, and diseases tend to spread more when you have heat and moisture. When you have moisture and cold, that's less likely. And it's also, the bugs slow down. Now, one of the downsides of the increase in temperatures that we're getting is that we don't really get as much of a break from the bugs, and they don't have a hard stop to their cycle. Places where it freezes, generally that's very helpful with the bug populations, because there's a time of year where they all either have to die or go dormant. And the more mild it is through your winter, the more of kind of a continuation you get of your pest breeding cycles and so on. So when it's cool, when it's warmer in the winter, you can get more pests the following year. So that's one of the things we're dealing with right now, is we're getting to grow things more, but we're also going to have to get better at dealing with pest and disease, because the winter's not suppressing it as much as it would if it got a lot colder. Anyway, so we got a few kinds of broccoli here. We've got this Di Chico, which is a Italian heirloom. It's called a sprouting broccoli. Sprouting broccolis are ones that make not as big of a main head, but then after you cut that main head, they'll make a whole bunch of side sprouts, and you can keep harvesting those. And until they'll get smaller and smaller as you harvest them, they'll almost never really stop. Eventually they get so small you'll be like, okay, I'm tired, I want to put a new broccoli in, and start with the bigger head. And so yeah, the sprouting broccolis are those types. This one happens to be a purple sprouting broccoli, just for fun. This one that I've renamed as a Romany broccoli, it's more of a main header, but it does, well, actually no, it says it's a medium small head size, and then good side shoots. If you want a really big head, this super broccoli here, it's a hybrid that makes the biggest broccoli I've ever grown, and it's been going pretty quick. And not only though does it make a really big main head, but it makes super big side shoots too. So that's a fantastic broccoli. Now, here's something. This is broccoli rabe. Broccoli rabe is not exactly the same as other broccolis. It's more of a mustard. The leaves are kind of turnipy, and it's basically a mini broccoli, and it's a fast one. Regular broccoli, you have to wait 2, 3, 4, 5 months sometimes. Excuse me, if you go through the winter for it to get big enough and make its head. The broccoli rabe is only going to get 6 inches tall, and it's basically going to bolt at that point. And so it's a really small broccoli, and well, it's basically a flowering plant in the mustard family that happened to get the name broccoli. It's also called spring rabe or broccolini sometimes. And so you just go ahead and mow it and harvest it at its 6-inch size and get little baby broccolis. Now, if you're really trying to feed yourself, in some ways, it's a way more practical plant than regular broccoli, because regular broccoli, you've got that in the ground for 3-4 months before you get to that head. And most of the plant, like the leaves, you're not actually eating. You can eat broccoli leaves. There's nothing wrong with that. If you eat them before it heads, though, you'll get a smaller actual broccoli head. And then afterwards, they're going to be a little bitter for most people's tastes. Not that they're not completely edible. Whereas this, in a month's time, you got a whole harvest. And if you're doing the succession thing we were talking about, then you'll have many, many harvests to come. So you're continually eating from the same patch of land. And then there's cabbage. We've got more cabbage over there. We'll talk about cabbage in a second. But cauliflower is kind of the same concept as broccoli, just even a little bit more sensitive to bolting, making its cauliflower head early. So growing in the winter makes it even easier to not stress it out. But it's the same concept that we're talking about, except cauliflower, to my knowledge, doesn't do side shoots the same way that broccoli, some of the varieties of broccoli can. That head of cauliflower you're going to get, that's what you get. And then over here we got some beets. These guys are really small. Beets fly off the table really quick, so we just got the first seed leaves on these guys. But yeah, beets, they're in the same family. Well, actually, no, they're not. These are in the spinach chard family. But here you're going for the root. So you can eat the beet leaves as well. You can eat them just like chard. If you eat too many of the leaves, though, you're going to stunt your actual beet if that's what you're going for. But yeah, beets grow great through the winter too. Them and their cousins, chard and spinach, they have been really hit hard lately by this pest called leaf miners that tends to burrow through the leaves. So we've been doing fewer of those lately because it's really hard to control. But the winter is the time to do it. That's when the leaf miner really can subside, and you have a better chance of growing them. Spinach, we don't have represented here because it's still not cool enough for spinach. Spinach really needs it to be cool to grow. And so we can do it the first few months of the year, then we take a break from it, and it's just still not cold yet. So we haven't started it yet. Y'all, as we go along, feel free to put questions in the chat, and we'll do a little Q&A here. I'm going to need to grab some more water real soon, talking myself dry, but I think I can get through this next row before I do that. So cabbages are through here. We got a lot of different cabbages. You know, cabbages, you're going for that main head. Now, the leaves are edible at any point. They tend to make a lot more leaves than what's actually sold at the store. They have all these big leaves around that central head that you recognize as the cabbage. And that central head doesn't really form until the very end. So, but it's a lot of food when you eventually get to it. Pests really do like them. So if you're going to grow cabbage, or basically any of these, brassicas is the formal name for the mustard cabbage family. You should probably attend the class next week when we talk about how to deal with aphids and powdery mildew and the cabbage caterpillars and all that nice stuff. One of the things is when you have all this really good food outside, everything wants to eat it. Because it's good food not just for you, it's good food for everything out there. And you're leaving your food outside, so of course everything's going to be going for it and trying to eat it. So we'll talk more about that next week if you want. Here's an example of that. This dwarf blue curly kale got munched by someone. Probably this looks like a damage from either some kind of rodent, either a mouse or a rat. We set traps out here at night because those guys can give pretty heavy pressure as well. They're trying to feed themselves, and sometime about 5 years ago, from my experience, they learned that they really like greens. So, and a lot of people from all over town would be coming in like, all my stuff is chewed down to a stem. What happened? That's probably what happened, especially if it was a green. This is an interesting one. This is Portuguese cabbage, and this is sort of the ancestor of cabbage and collards. The Portuguese were credited from these actually kind of starting up in their region, and then in their imperialist ambitions, they sort of spread them out across the world. And this particular one it's an ancestor because it's sort of a non-heading cabbage. It's kind of hard to tell whether it's the collard or a cabbage, but it's an older version of both, and it's very cool. It's historical, and you know, it's just a good way to mix it up and have something a little bit different with the stuff you're doing. There's another variety of cabbage. There's so many varieties of all these things, so we try to mix it up. This one is a red cabbage. It's a red Savoy, so it's got color, it's got texture, which will develop as it grows. Can't really see all that at this small stage. Next here we've got some parsley, and parsley is a biennial, so it will grow through the winter. From this, anytime you start it this year, it'll grow through the winter until next year, and then sometime next spring or early summer, it's going to go to seed and make the parsley seed. So, but it'll grow through the winter just fine. Give you some flavor to mix up. I think I got to grab my water one more time, so I'll meet you in the next aisle. I should have brought it with me. I'll keep it with me this time. One second, guys. There's someone at the gate. Hey, I'm doing a live class right now, so I'm in the middle of it.
Okay, I'll check.
All right, man. Give me a call. Alejandro Hayes just stopped by, local plant grower. Came to show me some plants to sell, to put out for some of our flowering stuff, but I had to let him know we're doing a live class. And thank you again to Khadija, who's behind the camera. I don't know if she wants to turn the camera and show herself or not. She's giving me a funny look when I say that. Hi, Khadija. Thank you very much for helping with this. Okay, so moving along, we're getting there. I think we're going to get through what I plan to do today for done. I don't know exactly what time it is, but we'll just go through it till we get through this part. So these are collards, kales. So it's still part of the same family that's dominated most of what we talked about, the cabbage, mustard, brassica family. And these, of course, we are going to eat for the leaves. Now, these are biennials. So you can plant collards and kales anytime during the year. But no matter what time you plant them during this year, they're going to flower next year, probably around March or April. Now, again, I said things break the rules here. They're supposed to be done then, but they may decide that they're not done, that this area is so mild that even though they've grown their full thing and they've made their flowers and their seeds, they want to keep going. Like this here, this is dino kale or lacinato kale. You can see actually it's got a good example. It's got some powdery mildew that we need to deal with there. But it's old at this point. Well, it's older than it's quote unquote supposed to be. It flowered in the spring. At that point, it would have technically been done. But it's like, hey, I'm in the Bay Area. I'm going to keep growing. It'll be less productive from now on than it was during its first growth period. But you can keep going with it. Sometimes they get to be like old friends, and you don't know when really to pull them up. They're like this old growth in your garden, and you're like, oh, you're not really giving me that much food now, but I've known you for 3 years, and can I really pull you up or not? It's tough. But yeah, so that's the case with the collards, the kale. And they're a really great source of food. And because you're going for the leaf on them, they can be, I think, more productive in some ways than like the cabbages or the cauliflowers or the broccolis, because you're not waiting for something on them. Whenever they're big enough to give you some leaves, you can take some. Now, you don't want to take too many, because the leaves are the solar panels for the plant. The plant needs to photosynthesize to grow. And if you take too many leaves off, you're going to stunt the growth of the plant. But they always have some they can give. And, you plant enough of them, you can take a few leaves off each to make your bunch and leave enough that it's growing fast enough to replace those leaves and keep going. Okay, so we've made it through most of our leafy stuff here. And then now we're going to move on to some other different things. In a second, we're going to move into the perennial food section. Like over here, we've got some Mary Washington asparagus, and we're going to talk about perennials. Over there, we have some tree collards that they're kind of a transition. Those ones are a little damaged, but they're growing out. They're just rooting right now, so I think they're going to be all right. Again, we grow our own stuff here, so you get to see all our different trials and tribulations and successes as we go along. But they're a good transition when we talk about perennial food, because they're the same family as these, but they're a variety has decided basically to never go to flower and to never stop growing. So those ones, and there's some that we can show you elsewhere if we get to that. They're big purple leaves, and that particular one is from a patch that we picked from the Spiral Gardens when we started like 27 years ago. We've been keeping the same plants going keep taking cuttings off of them, spreading them out all over the place. They flowered once through that whole time, but it didn't stop them. They just still kept going after that. And the odd thing about that interesting story is that they flowered all at the same time all over town. I don't know if they all were from the same plant or whatever, but somehow they knew at this certain point, it was like 2 decades after we'd first picked them, that they like all decided, hey, this is the time that we're going to go to flower. I don't know if that was genetic timing or there's some kind of environmental cue or something, but they all knew at that point to go to flower. Anyway, over here, this is kind of breaching our thing of this is pest control for and beauty. These are basically flowers for habitat. Well, this one is habitat, but it's also food for us. This is borage. A lot of flowers can be edible. Uh, Borage is a great little blue flower. You can eat the leaves too. They taste kind of like cucumber, but they also support the bees and things in your garden. So does this sweet alyssum. It feeds a lot of pollinators. This is a flower mix that's just particularly for shade coming up. This one's for hummingbirds. This one's for beneficial bugs. And then as the camera makes it down here, this one is for feeding bees as well. And then we're going to go around. So one of the best ways that you can control insect pests in your garden is by inviting the bugs that will eat them. Ecologically, there's balances to populations, and when one population gets big enough, there's usually something that will eat them. A lot of times when you're starting fresh in your garden all the time, you only get that first surge of the pest, and you don't have the predators that will eat those guys. Planting lots of beneficial flowers that will feed and attract the predators will then help keep the population of your pest insects down. So not only do flowers add beauty to their garden, but they also help a lot to keep it organic and to keep your pest populations in control. Pat, you said you have bitterleaf for us. That's great. We're going to talk about bitterleaf on the next aisle. So that's fantastic. So yeah, and there's a few more examples of flowers right here. This one's for monarchs. This one's for calendula. This is California poppies. And they're all small because these keep flying off the tables. Everybody wants the flowers, and we keep reseeding them. We're reseeding right here on the tables. And as soon as they get to any size at all, they've been going out. So that's why they're all so tiny, and we're having to do a lot of these macro shots to show you all these guys. This is rule bending a little bit for some of it. Some of it's right on time, like the poppies will naturally grow. In the Bay Area, I didn't really fully get into it, but for native plants, this is spring right now. At least the first time it gets rain, whenever that comes, end of October, November, December, is the beginning of spring. And that's when the hills, which are brown through the whole dry period, that's when they go green. And they grow, fall or beginning of winter is their spring, because that's when they have moisture. That's when the rains are here, and so that's when they grow. So the poppies, maybe a little early, but those are right on time. Some of these other things, some of them are perennials that would just grow through the year, so they're fine. Some of them are annuals. They're actually more suited towards the warm season. But again, I planted some around the demo bed we had here in November last year, and they grew fabulously through the winter, even though they were supposed to be summer annuals. And so, we're cheating a little bit on some of these, but it's worth it to have the flowers in there. Some of them are on time just fine. Some of them will just adapt to it. Now, another thing that's really good through the winter, we talked about leafy greens a lot, is onion family things, the alliums. We've got onions and garlics, and the garlics are just coming up. We've got this coming soon sign on them, but the bulbing onions and the garlics have really specific timings. The other ones, like the chives and the leeks and the bunching onions, the timing's a lot more loose. On garlic, the timing is they like to go in October. And honestly, all we did on this is we bought some cloves from the store, some bulbs, broke them up into the cloves, and planted them in these cells with the pointy side up. So You'll often see if you leave them in your cupboard too long that they'll start sprouting. So if you've seen that, you know what the sprouty side is. But the parts where the roots were on the bottom, that has to go down. You can put one clove, no matter how small. In fact, when I broke these up, what I did is I put the small cloves in here to grow, and the ones that were really big, I saved myself and made pesto from our basil harvest. So honestly, you're probably better off just going to the store and buying some bulbs of garlic and breaking them up into the cloves. But if you want some that are already started, we've got a whole bunch of them back there we're starting. So we'll have these through next year. For folks who want garlic that's already started or that was started on time. You could start garlic at any time, but if you want the biggest bulbs to harvest from, you start them now in October. They're going to grow all the way through the winter, and you won't actually harvest them until like next July or August. At that point, these green tops will have gotten really big, and they'll die back. All the energy will go into the bulb, and you can dig it up at that point. And left in the ground, of course, then they will just sprout again and do their whole thing and keep dividing. But we'll dig them up and then break them up and put some small ones back in. So we started these right on time. They haven't even all come up yet. If you want to be really safe, you can buy what's called seed garlic. And the only difference with that is that it's garlic that's been certified to be disease-free. But it's really expensive to buy it that way. You can buy it from different seed companies, different organic suppliers will have seed garlic, but you can pay up to $20 a pound for seed garlic. If you're a commercial grower, it might be worth it because you're starting with certified disease-free stock. But if you're just a regular person, you're probably just going to buy whatever garlic you like from the store, your usual garlic that you like to eat, and you'll bust it up and put it in. There was a thing that I've heard that commercial non-organic garlic is sometimes treated with a chemical that keeps it from sprouting. This actually was commercial garlic when it started. We're growing it organically ourselves, and it's going to grow all the way through August organically. But it's sprouting just fine, so I don't know if that's always the case. And that was just out of economic necessity to make these things affordable and work out for people. Anyway, going through the onion stuff, let me see over here. We can talk about the chives and the leeks and the bunching onions in a minute, but since we're talking about timing, we'll skip on down to here with the bulb onions. We've got 3 colors. These are the yellow ones, and we had like 3 trays of them last week, and we're down to 4. We got more coming of all of these. But this is a bulbing yellow onion. This is a bulbing white onion. And then over here we have a bulbing red onion. And they all have names, varieties that you don't need to worry about necessarily. This one's called Scout. This one's called Gladstone. The red one's called Cabernet. The reason I chose those varieties is that onions are really sensitive to day length. They can monitor how long the sun is on them throughout the course of the day, and they need certain lengths of sunshine to trigger them when to make their actual bulbs. So that's determined by latitude. So here in the Bay Area, we need what are called intermediate day onions. There's short day onions, intermediate day onions, and long day onions. We can kind of extend it to the long day onions, but mainly we want intermediate day onions, and that's if we want to get big fat bulbs from them. And the timing of onions is you start their seed now, or at a certain point you can get, I'm forgetting the name of them, but this starts either the mini bulblets or just like they look like green onions or shallots at that point, all bundled together. We started these from seed, and you start them now, and it's kind of like garlic, where they're going to grow all the way through the winter. They're going to be just fine with the winter, and then they're going to be harvested next July, August, even September. And it's the same thing as the garlic, where the tops will die back. They'll put all their energy into the bulb, and that's when you'll get the biggest bulb possible. Sometimes if they're going too long, either with the garlic or the onions, people will actually push the tops down, kind of bend them over, stress them out to try to do a little damage to them to try to then get them to put their energy into them. Now, that's the timing if you want big fat garlic and big fat onions. If you just want spring garlic or spring onions, and that's what they call it when you're not necessarily getting that bulb at the end or it's not fully formed, it's not papery necessarily, it's a little bit more mild. You can break the rules and do them at any point, any timing you need at that point if you want those. This what I was saying was the timing if you want, the full-sized papery bulbs. And a lot of times you'll plant too many of them now, and then you can thin them out in the springtime or early summer, and then get what's called the spring garlic or spring onions at that point. So we got one more table to go. Definitely, if you guys have any questions, please put them in here, because I definitely want this to be a Q&A, not me talking. This is just the first of this series, so we're going to be doing this every week and hopefully getting better at it and have a chance to go through more information as we go along. So also in here, we have, in the onion family, we have shallots. Shallots are kind of, grow them like a mini onion. You're also going for a small bulb at the end, but yeah, it's just little twist on the onion. And then we get into what are called scallions or green onions, bunching onions, and those are the thicker ones you buy in bunches that you can chop up. They're not quite as skinny as chives. Chives are the really thin ones, and those are over here. They're the next step up. Most of them don't make a bulb. Sometimes they fatten up a little bit in the ground, but mostly you're eating them for the tops, chopping them up fresh, sprinkling on stuff, either cooking them in soups or whatever, or putting them as a garnish on top of things. And then here we have leeks. Leeks are, you know what leeks are. It's the big fat guys, and you can grow leeks. The timing is actually looser than the onions because you're not going for an actual bulb, but generally you're either starting leeks in the spring or you're growing them in the fall through the winter. So this is an example of, obviously, of the fall-winter leeks. So yeah, onion family stuff is really a great thing to grow fall, winter in the Bay Area. And then we're going to move into the pea family here, and then we're going to talk a little bit about perennial food, and then we're going to wrap it up. So we'll talk about those in a second, but here we've got sugar snap peas. So sugar snap peas in general, are a good exception to the rule I said of leafy things or onions are what are good in the fall and winter. These are actually, you're eating, I'm not exactly sure actually if peas are considered a fruit or just a seed or what, but yeah, you're eating the pods. So the sugar snap peas are the ones with the big fat pods that you eat the whole pod, and then there's the snow peas, which are the flat pods. But both of them are basically edible potted peas. The shelling peas are more of a summer thing, I think. I'm not sure that you can actually grow those as well through the winter, but the edible potted peas, the sugar snaps and the snow peas, are really great for growing through the winter. These are going to vine, so you want to get a trellis for them. Depending on the type of pea you grow, they either anywhere from 3 to 5 feet, and they'll cover, just a few of them will cover a whole trellis, and you'll get a ton of peas. I have a hard time getting them inside to eat because I tend to just eat them right off the vine, so they don't really make it too far for me. But those love it during the winter here. That's their time. If you try to grow them during the hot season here, you can do it, and it depends on your microclimate, but they tend to get powdery mildew if you grow them when they're too hot. So this is their time. They're going to have no problem growing through the winter. Even a little freeze won't hurt them. And in the same family over here, we've got some fava beans coming up. They haven't all come up yet. You can grow fava beans either for food, or they've also been really popular a lot as a cover crop. Cover crop is when you grow something to actually fertilize your ground and you dig it back in. Obviously, if you're trying to grow these as a cover crop, here's one where all 6 have come up already. You wouldn't buy them in a 6-pack from us. You'd get like a pound of seed and stick it in the ground. The thing that makes them good for fertilizing your soil is things in the pea and bean family actually have a deal with a bacteria where they take the nitrogen from the air. Air is 70% nitrogen. Nitrogen is responsible for leafy growth of plants. And so they can actually take nitrogen from the air, which wouldn't be available to most plants otherwise, and then can make it into a water-soluble form that can go into the soil and plants can use. If you're using that as a cover crop, you want to dig it in by the time it flowers. You can't eat it and dig it in and have a net gain of nitrogen. You'll have actually still a slight net loss of nitrogen at that point. So that's a fine detail, but so you're really either growing it for fertilizer, you're growing it for food. If you're growing it for food, it's going to grow famously through the winter. It loves the cold. It'll get about this high, and then in the spring, going into summer, it'll make the fava beans, and you can eat them. They're a bit of work. You got to shell them twice. I'm usually a bit too lazy for doing them fresh, but I like them a lot. So if you're willing to go through that double shelling, it's a great thing to do. We've got some chives here that are not quite ready. But yeah, then we're getting into perennial food. And so perennial food is anything that just keeps growing. We saw some examples of it over there. We're going to need to backtrack a little bit, but we'll show you these first, and then maybe we'll backtrack over there. This is some rhubarb. This is one that has a red stem. There's green stemmed and red stems, rhubarb. Rhubarb grows great here. It gets real big. It looks kind of Jurassic when it gets big and leafy, but you don't eat the leaf. The leaf is actually a little bit poisonous, apparently, but you can eat the stem. And so whenever it has enough stems to give you, and it's bigger, you can take some of them, cook them down, and you get a real tart sauce from them. There's a lot of different ways to cook it. The way, is most known is like strawberry rhubarb pie or something like that. I've just done the rhubarb as a sauce by itself, and a lot of people will use that tart flavor even on savory foods. So there's a lot of different ways you can use it. It'll grow year-round. Over here we've got horseradish. Horseradish grows like a weed here. It grows from the root. Every little inch piece of the root will make a new plant if you want. So if you plant it, be careful. If you dig through it, you might get horseradish everywhere. But you can eat the leaf. You can eat the root. The leaf tastes mildly like horseradish, so sort of like a horseradish flavored, green. Or you can just wait for the root. Apparently most wasabi nowadays, the actual wasabi plant is really hard to grow, so in sushi and wasabi are so popular that most wasabi nowadays is actually ground up horseradish with green food coloring. But you can make sauerkraut and all the different things you can do with horseradish. I'm not a horseradish expert, but I do want to eat more of it. I like it. Here we have a small group of the African bitter leaf. This is one we started growing recently. And this is used as spinach through most of equatorial Africa. In equatorial Africa, spinach itself actually wouldn't grow very well at all. A young woman from Cameroon came through here recently. She was really excited to see this because her family still uses it a lot, but they usually get a dried leaf of it in the stores. And to see that the fresh plant actually grew here, she was super excited. It does really well here. It gets to be like a 14-foot tall bush. You can keep hacking from it. You can take pieces of it, stick it in the ground in a little root. And I haven't used it yet myself, but she's promised to get me some recipes. So I'm actually really looking forward to using it. One of the famous dishes that's made with it is ndole, which is like a leafy it's these leaves with a peanut sauce or peanuts mixed in it. And there's a lot of other different uses for it, but super reliable leafy green from Africa. So that's a good one. This is not the time to grow peppers, but there are some peppers that will grow through the winter. We just actually did these from cuttings from a bush we have back there. This is called a ricotta or a manzano pepper, and it is one of the peppers I know that's most likely to be able to make it through the winter. It does great. It doesn't seem to suffer at all. It makes these blocky fruits. This one here is yellow, but they can either be yellow, orange, or red. with black seeds, super hot. I don't know how they compare to like a habanero or something like that, but for me, they're way more than hot enough. One of them will heat up a large pot of stuff. If you want to make a super spicy hot sauce, these will do you. But yeah, this the one pepper that I'm offering right now. We did it from cuttings from one over there just because people kept coming in asking for more peppers. So, but generally peppers are out of season at this point, although they are perennials in the tropics, so they can break the rules sometimes and actually grow through the winter. This is burdock. Burdock's going to grow through the winter. Burdock you probably should have planted earlier this year. You eat the roots generally. They're a really good tonic root vegetable, and you could still plant them now, and they won't go to seed until next year. But they are a little late. Would have been better to put them in a little earlier. Now, Mario, I promised you we would get the artichokes. So here they are. You got some older ones back here. You got young ones here. We did these from seed. Artichokes are a big thistle, basically, and they will grow to 3-4 feet around until then they go to flower and they make the buds, which are the artichokes. And they're not super productive for a ton of food. I mean, artichokes themselves, like most of it, you're just like pulling that little bit of flesh off that. But they are really good for you. Thistles are really great for your liver, among other things. And they do keep doing it. And they're a nice like combination sort of landscaping plant, edible food. They do die back down to the ground once a year, or sometimes twice a year, depending. And you think they're dead, but they're not. The shoots will come back up from the ground, and they'll do it all over again. Every few years, I like to dig those shoots up, divide them, renew the soil, and put them back in, and that keeps them vigorous. But that's another good perennial food. And then, let me see, over here, we've got, we're winding up here, we got lovage, which I think is a great name. But lovage is a variety of celery, a perennial celery that will keep growing through the year. Are we good? It's showing you.
Yeah, I just flipped it accidentally.
Okay. There we go. There's a delay on this thing. And then wrapping it up, this is a salad burnet. It's a little rosette of these textured leaves. These ones have been in here for a minute, so we have a few rough bits, but these some fresh ones coming up back here. They grow forever. They taste kind of cucumbery. They've got a nice kind of light flavor, but there's something that you can just eat fresh, add to your salads all the time. Just something to mix it up. These are another nightshade family plant. These are called Cape gooseberries, but they're neither from the Cape nor are they gooseberries. The better name for them is Inca berry. These are from Brazil, I think, and they make a husk-like nightshade fruit, kind of like a tomatillo, but smaller. It's got a little yellow berry inside of it, and they're really bright, really tart, probably full of vitamin C and stuff. I don't know. But these get to be big bushes that will grow famously through the winter, just through all the seasons here, and they'll keep making those Cape gooseberries. Another green that's perennial all the time is these guys. This is French sorrel. So it's a tart, tangy, oxalic acid-full leaf. And those will keep growing from the same spot, keep being an ever-widening bunch. They love the winter. Here is a Andean root plant called oca. It's like a mini potato, but it's a type of oxalis, which is actually a weed here, but this is not that oxalis. But oxalis is also called sour grass. It has that same kind of oxalic acid tang that the sorrel does. And they taste almost like a vinegary potato. They're very good, and they grow really reliable here. These are just some examples of perennial foods you can grow here. There's a lot of other ones. So they're another example of what you could grow through the winter here But I think that was a pretty good walkthrough here, kind of talking about what the seasons feel like here, what some of the quote unquote rules are for what to plant when you can break those rules, and just kind of a general idea of how you can keep feeding yourself through the winter. So if you have any last questions, now's your time to put them in here as we wrap up. I'd be happy to answer anything you guys have. But yeah, we're going to keep doing this every week. I really hope that this was valuable for you. I hope it helps inspire you to plant some more. We're open on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 5. So if you want to come get some of these very plants, you're more than welcome to do that. I look forward to seeing you here. And but it's when we're busy on the weekends, it's really hard to answer all the questions that people have. There's a lot of new gardeners coming in, and since we can't do the scheduled classes in person like we're used to doing here, we're going to start doing this more often. So I'm really looking forward to this. Next week, I think we said we're going to talk about pests and diseases, plants. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about fertility at the same time. So for now, we're doing it every Thursday at 3. And for now, we're doing it live on Facebook. I will put a link in the description afterwards when I get this set up to the Facebook page we're starting. So if you want to go ahead and, there's not much over there for you now, but if you want to go ahead and like it so we can get enough people to live stream from that as well, that would be really helpful. You can go to our website. If you want to contribute, we are a nonprofit. Our mission is to educate so that folks can be growing food in the city and kind of bridge that generational gap of people who got out of contact with how to do this, and help that relearning, that re-embracing of the soil. A lot of other things we can talk about, but yeah, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in right now. So thank you all for watching until the end of this class, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Bye bye.